Okay, we are live. And this is the very first episode of the podcast club. And it's exciting because I have been a podcaster probably for about, I want to say about 7 years now. And before I got on this call tonight, I was looking at listen notes, and I'm a host for Business Innovators Network. And the cool thing is that of all of the podcasts in the whole universe, Business Innovators Network is in the top 5%, and it has a listen rank of 34 out of 100. So that, that's not the best, but it's also pretty decent considering that there are literally now millions of podcasts out there. And I think it's important that people understand a little bit about podcasting, broadcasting, and the move. Many people have heard of Clubhouse, which is audio only. And then, of course, you have TV, online TV, which is what this is. And I would consider, in my opinion, anytime you have audio and visual, it's all a good thing. I'm going to go ahead and do a safety record, even though it's being recorded at can everybody hear me? Werner wants to know. So I should be good. Everybody good with the audio? I hope so. So let me just say that this is the premiere edition, and technology is always fun, but this is the podcast club. And what I want to use this forum for is to do some education, to do some advocacy work, to be a mentor, and to really help you all understand the power that you literally have just by the fact that you have a computer and a microphone at your disposal, because you can literally reach around the world and probably even into outer space if we wanted to look at it that way, because it's all about you are on the air, on the airwaves. And I want to give a little bit about my background. Like I said, podcaster for about 7 years, but my uniqueness comes from being in the media for many, many years, and also having an education or a degree in mass communications. And right now, I wanted to just talk a little bit about being on both sides of the mic. And I have a little poll that I wanted to have everybody do real quick. And so I'm going to launch this, and it's called Which Side of the Mic? And if you can answer that, number one, do you have your own podcast or radio show or TV show already? Do you want to be a guest on podcasts? And do you have any burning questions about this topic that you want? And this poll should show up in a way that you can see it. I see somebody's answering. So we've got about half of, okay, the answers are coming in, which side of the mic. So far, we have about a third of you who've answered out of 4, because we don't have a big audience yet. You actually have one person who already has a show, and that would be Brian. And I think that Werner has his own show, and I think Heshi is actually working on her own show. And you might not even think of your BeKonnected show as a podcast, but it really is, because of the fact that you can take that show and use it all over the place. And I want everybody listening to really understand that you have power of both being on both sides of the mic, and both sides are going to help you have more impact, more influence, and of course, help you make more income because of the authority it gives you. So I have that only one of you thinks you have a podcast or a radio show, but everybody wants to be a guest on podcasts, which is good. And I've actually done extensive training that's recorded talking about being a six-figure podcast guest. And then every one of you told me that you do have a burning question that you really want the truth on. And I think that's important, because a lot of times in the marketing world, podcast world, media world, people don't always tell you the truth about how something works. And I always try to tell you, well, this is what it is, and this is what it isn't. Because some people, they think that they can, for example, go on an interview, be on a podcast one time, and the host shares it out. Yay, I was on a podcast, and that's a done deal. No, you literally have to keep appearing and keep sharing and leverage your content over and over again. I'm going to check the chat box because I see some questions. Let's see. Okay, Werner says, well, how do you get started? Heshi, how do you build a following on your podcast? And Brian says, there's no box to fill in, and I can't think of anything. So the box is in the chat, Brian. I figured it would just be easier. So that's a really good question, Werner. How do you get started? To create your own podcast, you are right here in the perfect place to get started, because you have access to Zoom. So what do you need to get started on a podcast? An idea. What value can you provide to your audience or your potential clients or your customers? What is your message and your big mission? So that's really where you start, is what value, ask yourself, what value can I bring to the world that only I can bring? And that is something that's so important, because the reality is each person, only they can provide a value to the world, even though we might all have similar ideas about something. The way that we present it, the way that we perceive it, the way we think about it is all unique. And that's your gift that you can bring out in a podcast. So you need that idea. What is your value? Who is your audience? And you can do research either from real life experience, or you can go out and find out, well, what other shows are there similar to your topic? Are they popular? And you can check out the demographics. For example, who are your current clients? Who are the people who love you and can't get enough of what you have to say and to do? They follow you on Facebook. They follow you on all kinds of social media. When you say something, they literally, like you say jump, and they do say how high, and they want to buy things from you. They want to support you. They want to be part of your energy. So that's really important. And then as far as technology goes, again, what do you need? You need access to a computer and a microphone and some type of recording device. And to tell you the truth, you're in the lap of luxury in the BeKonnected platform, because you have the Zoom platform, which gives you ability to live stream to Facebook, live stream to YouTube, have transcriptions, but you don't even need that. You literally could use a free recording device, like free telephone conference call. That's how I started. So I just started with audio. I didn't even have a microphone. I didn't need to use video because I was recording it on the phone. I still edit my audio podcast using an online editing system. And I did pay a voice talent and a professional to make my introduction and my outro to my shows. And I literally found some people on Fiverr, which is a place where you can get, if you shop it, high quality voiceovers with royalty-free music for, let's say you could put together something for under $100, or you can pay a lot of money and have more, somebody write a song for you or write music for you. You literally can start with nothing, or you can invest a lot of money into podcasting. But again, think about, what is your message? What value do you bring to your audience? Who is that audience? And where might they be? And again, most of us have some idea or inkling of who might be interested in listening to us. And then other people like me, I get an idea and I kind of just throw it out there and see what people say. But I'd say that's the hard way to do it, just because you're literally just trying to figure it out, because there is a lot of information out there. And then once you have the idea, the value you bring, are you going to just talk yourself, or are you going to do interviews? So there's decisions to make along the way. And I don't want to get into too deep into this tonight, but that is a topic that I literally can spend a lot of time on, where we break it down. And there's a roadmap that you follow, like A, B, C, step 1, 2, 3. And then that other question from Heshi was, how do you build a following? And again, you start with a base of maybe your clients or customers or people who are already in your network, and invite them. And you can do it organically or with paid advertising. And another good way is to borrow other people's audiences. And what that means is, for example, if I contact you and I say, hey, Heshi, I would like to interview you, the expectation, and this is important, is that when I interview you, you're going to take that finished podcast and share it with your people, with your tribe, or with your groups. So that I would be borrowing your groups and you're borrowing mine. So it becomes, in my opinion, a win-win-win, because I'm helping you, you're helping me, and our audience is benefiting from the two of us. And when we talk, and our energy, and how, new things happen, because it's like all of a sudden you have, me with my ideas, you with your ideas, and we start to talk, and they're leaning in, listening to that makes for an interesting conversational podcast. So that's what that is. Werner asked a question, and the question was, so was my show a podcast? In my opinion, the word podcast, it's a little bit of a misnomer. It's new media mash is what I actually call it, because yes and no. Technically, a podcast would be an audio version of a show. And what your show was, Werner, was actually an online TV show. So, however, if we take your online TV show and stream it to YouTube or out on Apple or Blog Talk Radio or any of the myriad channels that are out there, some of the time it might be flowed out as a TV show video cast, or audio would be considered podcast. The word podcast actually came back when I think it was Apple had the iPod. And what that meant was it was portable music, portable communications. And then as time went on, it developed, and there were many people doing podcasting when it was a lot harder to do and a lot more expensive. Again, now we're in this arena where we can afford it. And of course, if you look at traditional radio, that has been around for a long time, and it predates television. And so if you think about it, radio, people have been listening to the radio for a long time. I think Marconi and Tesla back in the day, in the early 1900s, 1920s, when radio became very popular, people used to gather around the radio to listen to the, fireside chats, to listen to plays, to listen to music. The famous War of the Worlds teleplay where everybody panics. I mean, that's been around. And so this is all just graduated. And Brian, I'm going to see if I can unmute you, Brian. Here, ask to unmute, it says. And then I'm not sure, because let me see something. I'm not sure if you have your video on tonight, Brian. Let me see if.
Oh, no, I don't have any video on. I got my tuxedo on and everything, though.
Oh, well, I don't know how to make it be a video on this side.
Well, I'm here with I see my picture when I talk, so.
Okay. Well, the reason, again, maybe I need to do something here. Let me see. I don't know.
But then you're going to find out I'm a liar because I'm not wearing my tuxedo as I claim.
Let's just say that Brian is my guest. We had a really great talk, and I could see him earlier today. And I'm going to use this first episode of the Podcast Club as my learning experience. But Brian, we were talking today about what each one of us does, and you told me that you actually have a radio show. Tell everybody a little bit more about that, because I wanted to just hear about that more and kind of brainstorm with you about your show and how you use it or will use it, because you told me you want to turn it into a podcast also. And then other people can get an idea about how radio or TV shows or podcasts can be used for impact, influence, and income.
So To kind of to finalize how this looks is I have a broadcast radio show that broadcasts in the New York metropolitan area, basically northern New Jersey, southern New York, with a reach into Manhattan, AM and FM, and it's actually simulcast on 2 different stations. And my show is called Million Dollar Feeling and airs on Saturday mornings. I used to do it live and until I discovered a mechanism where I can actually record the shows with my guests, which gives me a lot more flexibility because then I don't have to have guests specifically showing up on Saturday mornings. They could show up. We could just record whatever is mutually convenient. And since my show is not a call-in show, it makes that very, very reasonable to do it that way. If it was a call-in show, it might be a little bit, of course, it would be a lot different. So using some of the things you were talking about before, where you were talking about building out something that helps people identify with you. The theme for Million Dollar Feeling is to create some sort of shape-shifting piece of information in every episode that is about positive living. The community for positive living is the framework for Million Dollar Feeling. And we have guests on that will share their message to the world that might be unique or might be a different perspective, or maybe has a specific twist on it that's pertinent to the quality or kind of work that they do. Sometimes the guests come on the show, we just have a conversation just in sort of general terms. And other times we have people who come on because they've got in part of their message to the world. They also have platforms that they would like to promote so that they can further their message through, as you shared before, if we're sharing with each other and with our podcasts or our audiences, it helps us mutually grow our audiences. So if somebody comes on to tap into my network, I can just as easily either go on their shows if they have one, or at least leverage their network when they came in so that I can expand the exposure and reach of my radio show. The idea of going to a podcast is strictly just because my time on the broadcast, in the broadcast arena on this station, I can see has limited days because the station itself is shifting its format, and I just don't think I would fit there past my current term and with my current contract. So, I hope that's a short description of what's going on and what we're doing here. Is there any specific question that comes out of that?
So when you, do you interview your people then remotely also for your radio show?
So in my particular case, we're using Zoom as the meeting place. And then I convert, and it's all done with video and audio recording, but then I add, I do an extraction of the audio format that the radio station needs to have for them to have an audio for broadcast. And it's been working very well. I've been doing it now. I'm approaching 2 years doing it this way as of November. And I think I have better quality too, because I have you had mentioned sometimes you can start small. I did start with a fairly inexpensive little mixer with a microphone. I eventually took my public speaking headset. It's got, it's battery operated, and plugged that into that little mixer. And I ultimately wanted to get and Tammy, you may recall that I had a pretty nice microphone in front of me today. I wanted to plug in this high quality cardioid microphone made by a company called Shure into my micro mixer, and it wouldn't work. So I then went out and invested in a much higher end mixer to put into my environment. So now everything I do, I can even do special effects if I wanted to, like, hey folks, I'm talking to you from a tunnel. So, that kind of thing could be done. And you don't have to go as high end as I did. I'm not even that super high end. I spent a couple $100 on this piece of technology plus the microphone. So, but whether you're doing it for radio or you're doing it for a quality conversation with somebody in Zoom, or whether you're doing it for releasing for podcast or videocast or any other form that you're out there, I recommend everybody who gets onto Zoom have a quality voice set up anyway. How many of us have strained listening to a conversation with somebody where the voice is bouncing off the wall, they've got echo in the room, whatever the case may be. So I really encourage everybody to make sure that they at least have a really nice, high quality headset. Perhaps they have it set up through a, a small early, low cost mixer, but do something to make sure that your audio is making your audience not strained to listen to what you're saying.
I think that's good advice. The only thing that I always want to make sure that everybody understands is don't let not having the highest and best microphone or mixer or other tools stop you from starting, because a lot of times that's how people end up, that's their procrastination. It's like perfection. And for example, today's a really good example of imperfect action, which, I had a little bit of technical difficulty with some odd, password problems that I hadn't anticipated, because I was doing this show, I was talking and just doing everything, as if I had an audience, even though you guys were having trouble getting in. But I think that's important. But I agree with you, Brian, that if you can get this equipment, it does help you a lot, because it helps with the sound quality. Because if your sound is echoey or off, people won't listen.
It strains the audience. It strains the audience. And so I'm just going to give an example. I'm going to switch real quickly between the microphone on my desktop and the microphone that I was just using. You can hear a difference right out of the gate, right?
Yes.
So what I've been recommending to people is there's a fairly cost-effective Logitech branded, you probably could find another brand, but I just happen to think Logitech tends to be fairly good support. And you can get a really nice headset with a boom mic that's right in front of you that plugs into your USB port on your computer, that will give you a much higher quality voice experience for your audience. Plus, you'll hear better too as a show host or a podcast host. So I'm not asking people to go out and make major investments. I'm just suggesting that sometimes the littlest things will make the difference between a good start and a rough start.
Right. I agree. And it's just like with lighting in your room, if you are doing Zoom, you can get an inexpensive, they're a circular light. I don't know the name of, they're a vanity light basically,
Yep.
But just having that light on your face could make the difference between you looking kind of like Skeletor and you. And right now my lighting is not the best, but at least I do have something working. Let me go ahead and go check our chat here again. Let's see. Heshi says, Brian, what is the Logitech model you use?
Well, I will make sure I get that information for you as we're talking, because there's every time, because of the way technology changes, it's usually slightly different model, but I will make sure we have something for everybody here. I'll put it into the chat.
And you did say the Shure, which is SHURE.
That's correct. I have a Shure 158 or a CM 158, and that's in terms of cost, that's a little bit more than $130. And then I have a mixer made by a company called Pyle, Pyle, which the exact model of which I would have to get up for you folks. But if it makes it easier for the audience who comes and listens to the show now or later, we can make sure that information is there even after the fact, so people can order if they like what I do.
Another thing that I wanted to ask you, and I think this is helpful for people considering a podcast, and since you are doing a radio show, are you using the radio clock, which is where you do your segments at a certain length so that they can put advertising and station identification into it?
Right. So first of all, I have sponsors that help defray the cost or offset the cost of having a radio show, because I broadcast on a community station that makes their money from their hosts getting sponsors to cover the cost of the show on the platform. So I do have inserted into that was weather and news and the sponsor commercials, our advertising, and all of that. That makes sense for an audience to have, like, maybe some local information that's provided as well. I then get 46 to 47 minutes, depending on how I time that, to air across the hour. And for me, that works out to be 10 minutes and 3 12-minute segments that I record. And rarely do I get exactly 10, 12, 12, 12, 12. Sometimes it's 10 and 13 and 12 and 11 minutes and 56 seconds or whatever. So the radio station will adjust for all of that with whatever they have to fill. But I do actually have to carve it out with the clock to make sure that the radio show segments are allotted within their ability to do all those extra things like advertising and things like that. That's the advantage, by the way, to a podcast. One of the reasons why I'm looking forward to going to a podcast is because I cannot tell you how many times we have these great conversations and we come almost to a screeching halt at the end of the 46 minutes because there is not enough time to take on another twist and turn, or however great the conversation is, however great the content is, we are time limited. And as a podcast, you can decide what that means for you. You can decide, I want to do a 1 hour show, or I want to do whenever the conversation stops, that's when the show ends. You can do all kinds of things with podcasting because you're really doing replay. If you're doing a live show, or something that fits into a live show framework, it's a very different beast.
Right. Well, that's something I wanted to point out about the live in the Hive. Just because it's live in the Hive does not mean that those shows always have to be live, because just like what you said, it plays at a certain time, but you pre-recorded it. And you can do the same thing even in a live scenario, because the BeKonnected platform actually has sections where you can say it's a replay or a promotional video. So it is set up so that you can time your shows, even though they appear to be live, they're recorded. But I agree with you about podcasting having that ability to, you can make it a short show or a long show, or Q&A, or it could be tips, it can be interviews. In my experience, a lot of my interviews seem to run about between 30 and 40 minutes. It seems like a natural course of things. But if I say I'm going to keep it within 30 minutes, that's good. But on iHeartRadio, for example, they want your show to be at least 25 minutes. So you always have to be thinking about, well, how am I going to be using this? I wanted to ask you, because sponsors are one way to finance your show. Another way, of course, is to just pay for it yourself or not. In your experience, tell me more about the credibility factor, the clout factor. How much do podcasts or radio shows or TV shows help someone with their business?
It can be a challenge depending on what kind of show you have, by the way. So like, for example, I have a show with national appeal, but the radio station looks for local support. So I have basically, my sponsors are people who are supporting what I'm doing, and they know that they will have a slightly different kind of client, because of course we're working on positive energy, positive living, positive thinking, positive emotions, and things like that. And so they're not necessarily going to get people who are just like your morning, cooking show, listener, who are going to take their car for car repair. My client, my sponsors are a car repair place, a kitchen design shop, somebody who did holistic healing, and before that I allowed it. Now I stop at 3, but I used to have 6 and inside of those 6 sponsors, not one of them was had the same national appeal that I'm going for as I'm reaching into the podcast arena. I'm looking for people who are looking for national exposure because my material is not local in nature. It's not necessarily local in nature. So, and then it covers the cost of in this case, I'm using a community radio station where there is an hourly rate to be on the air. And the purpose is just to cover those costs. In my case, I'm not necessarily using the actual broadcast of the show to make money. I do sometimes. Now, here's where there can be a difference. Some of the guests that come on the show have affiliate options. So if they're promoting something like a course, some learning experiences, or perhaps some other kind of thing where there's some sort of ticket price involved, and they have an affiliate program, then when I put the links up on my website, and that's how we get the information about the guests out to them. By the way, we don't do hey, my phone number is X, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's, first of all, nobody's in a position to write that down most of the time. So we have the audience conditioned to go to milliondollarfeeling.com to find that information. And inside of that could very well be an affiliate link that's attached to finding that course or that widget or whatever the case may be, so that I could be getting a little bit more money to offset. This is more of it for me currently is an act of love than is anything like that. So I'm not looking for it to be a major profit center. But if I get some money to help make the show more manageable, it's nice to have that kind of money. So I encourage people to, when they're looking for sponsors and they're looking for guests, is look at whether or not there's some sort of affiliate arrangement you can pick up in the process.
I think that's a really important point to make, because a lot of times people, they fail at monetizing their podcast guest appearances, as well as, being a host on the show. I turned mine into money making by turning my interviews into books. And that was one way that I monetized it. But I think that the affiliate marketing, what you're talking about, is a really important way. And like you said, they're trained to go to the milliondollarfeeling.com website to listen to the show, to get more information. And that is a big part of podcasting, is that call to action. And you're right, when you are verbalizing a telephone number or something, I always try to get people to give me a website. If they're going to say anything, at least, normally websites are short, but I think that you're really, a lot of us are missing out by not creating that affiliate relationship with the different guests on the show. And I don't want to keep everybody here too late tonight, but I just wanted to kind of give everybody a flavor or a hint of some of the cool things that we could learn. And so far, I know, Brian, that we've thrown out a few things that our audience probably didn't think of before or know about. And again, I really like the idea that you have the radio show background, because you could do your podcast like a radio show, and then it would qualify to be on an over-the-air station. And even if it's not, there would be ways that it could be edited to fit that radio clock, because again, radio, they do have news and weather and sponsors. And so it would be kind of a good practice to learn how to do segments.
Well, currently, I do the opposite. I do the standard airing through, as you call it, the radio clock. And then I take that show and I put it up for a replay on my website, along with all the guest information, the link information for the guest, how to reach out to them, if there's a book, here's the link for the book or whatever. And so it makes it much easier for me at the moment to just put the radio show up as completely raw the way it was, rather than editing it to take out all the news and all that stuff for the moment.
Yeah.
But in time, everything that's been recorded will get repurposed So that's another thing, is make sure you save your content so you can repurpose it down the road for other things you might be working on. I did, by the way, put the list of equipment. The first piece was the headset I recommend everybody get if they are just wanting to operate independently, whether they're a Zoom user in any kind of group of meetings, or whether they're maybe starting out as an early podcaster or something like that. Get the Logitech H540. It's less than $40. I think it's actually less than $30. And it gives you fairly decent quality for the process. And then the other three things I put on there is the exact microphone. I have a very high-end Sennheiser headset and the Pile PMX U88BT mixer, in case anybody wants to say, well, if I have a few, I've got $400 I want to put into play, what would I do? I would do these things.
Good. And I think Hindi, it's almost 9 o'clock, but this is what I'd like to do in the next episode of Podcast Club, is I'd actually like to talk to the people who show up, and like Hindi, for example, does energy healing and feng shui.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that she could be an awesome guest, as well as have her own show talking about the energy, talking about feng shui, because there's a lot you would need to know. What do you think about that idea, about a show for Hindi that really emphasized what she does?
Well, I would say, first of all, yes, by all means. I think Hindi, in fact, Hindi should come on my show so she can get her feet wet. But the idea here is that what she really wants to build, and you hit on this in the beginning, is you really want to do is figure out what's your groove. It's you have a story and a narrative that's attached to that. It's connected to your passion, but it really needs to be what's in it for the audience. So we have to always make sure there are little gems from every show that you produce that actually gives the audience something where their life is somehow or other being changed. It could be entertainment, but for the most part, I always feel like there can be really valuable information inside of entertainment. So looking at something like what Hindi is doing, is that she could be doing some powerful dialogue on some of the options without giving away her secrets, because that's another thing, is I don't tell people I'm a hypnotherapist on the show. I never tell anybody I'm a hypnotherapist. Maybe I refer to it once in a while, but I'm really not focused on hypnotherapy. That's not my theme. That just turns out to be one of the tools in my little bag of tricks that I use to help people in leadership development and personal transformation. So that's my work at home, so to speak. But when I'm doing the show for the audience, I'm doing the show to make sure they've got something that they can take home that makes their life better. And I know Hindi has that in her. So Hindi she can invite people on her show that support what she does. She can have maybe a client who will come on and be a testimonial to the kind of work that she does, but she really needs to make sure she's serving the community and not herself in the process. That's the real trick, is that when you're building the kind of podcast that's going to be successful, it has to be for the audience, not for you.
That is 100% great advice. So I want to wrap up for this podcast club meeting, but I think that we have done what you just said needs to be done tonight, because you gave everybody concrete information about the headsets and the microphones and the tools that they would need in order to have a good start. So that is very tangible. And then also, I think that everybody here has gotten a good kind of just a basic idea of enough so that their brains can start spinning about all the possibilities. And to me, that's very valuable when I get connected and I'm able to start thinking about all the possibilities. So Brian, I'll have to invite you back again, because I'm sure that we could have really great, insightful, valuable conversations that do end up giving people really concrete advice and information. And everybody definitely reach out to Brian and see about how to become a guest on his show, because again, it's recorded and the value isn't in that moment in time. It's not in the interview in one moment in time. It's in the leveraging and replaying and repurposing of the content. And if you can get that in your head about every single interview you do, and to leverage it and rinse and repeat and keep using it, you're going to find that every single interview you do will not only help everybody, but it will come back to you, and your impact and your influence and your income will expand with that, because you are really bringing value to the world. So before I let any of you go, does anybody have any questions or comments? And we will go ahead, and I'm going to unmute you. Heshi, if you can unmute yourself. Hindi, thank you so much for coming.
My pleasure. Love being with you and all these wonderful people, and looking forward to make a difference in this world together.
Thank you. And I know you've already made a difference in my world, Hindi, so thank you so much. And let's see, Werner wants to know about repurposing. So Werner, let's make that the topic for our next podcast club, and we'll talk about repurposing. How's that?
Sounds good.
Okay. And Heshi, do you have any comments?
Well, I want to know when I'm going to get to meet Hindi.
You met Hindi?
I don't know.
Oh my goodness.
Are we friends on Facebook? Are you in South Florida? Where are you?
Oh, no, I'm in Pennsylvania.
Ah, well, let's become Facebook friends, and we can chat.
Okay,
Oh,
that sounds
I
great.
didn't know Vanessa was here. Hi, hey, Vanessa. Somehow I didn't know you were here. I see you. Let's see. Huh. I don't even know. I don't see you anywhere, but she said something, so there goes the cat. So anyway, everybody, with that, our next episode will be all about repurposing. And again, Brian, you're always welcome to come back as a guest. And I really appreciate the fact that you were so patient with our technical problems.
It's easy to be patient as long as you're patient.
Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and close out everyone. Again, this is Dr. Reverend Tami Patzer, and this is the Podcast Club, where you are going to learn how to rock both sides of the mic. So I'll talk to you all soon. Okay. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Tammy.
Bye.